Every time divorce rates rise or the definition of a household changes, a specific panic sets in. The family is falling apart. We generally assume the family unit is a biological instinct, a natural constant that modern life is somehow breaking. But the historical record suggests something far more complex. It forces us to ask if the family is truly an instinct, or if it is instead one of humanity's most sophisticated artificial inventions. Anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss challenged the idea of a purely natural family. He observed that, if humans operated strictly on instinct, we would reproduce within isolated bloodlines, much like other mammalian packs. Lévi-Strauss argued that the universal incest taboo functions as a social technology. By forbidding mating within the immediate group, humans were forced to build alliances by exchanging members with outsiders, creating a sprawling network of cooperation. This move toward external alliance established a cultural architecture for survival. The family became the mechanism that organized human groups into a society, operating through these rules of exchange rather than simple biological proximity. For centuries, this social architecture produced a highly rigid structure in the West. The traditional family functioned as an economic fortress. At the center of this fortress sat a figure who wielded absolute authority. This is the archetype of Deus Pi, God the Father. Within his home, the patriarch operated as a domestic monarch with total jurisdiction over his subjects. In this era, marriage was a business negotiation between lineages, a contract designed to ensure the survival of land, wealth, and the family name. Wives and children were legally and socially tied to the patriarch's will. Their individual desires were secondary to the economic stability and the preservation of the father's patrimony. Under the rule of Deus Pi, the social structure was remarkably stable, but that stability was maintained through the absolute submission of everyone within the household to a single, unyielding authority. In the mid-18th century, the private sphere began to change. A new cultural force arrived to challenge the economic fortress: romantic love. Men and women began to choose their partners based on mutual feeling and physical attraction. They started prioritizing their own emotional lives over the strategic alliances brokered by their parents. This birthed the modern family. For the first time, affection and emotional intimacy became the primary metrics for a successful household, replacing the old requirements of duty and labor. When marriage was based on love, the internal power dynamics shifted. Partners entered the union expecting emotional reciprocity, making the old model of one-sided patriarchal command increasingly difficult to maintain. Once affection became the foundation of the home, the absolute authority of the traditional patriarch began to lose its structural necessity. Romantic love wasn't the only force challenging the father's rule. During the 19th and 20th centuries, two other external powers began to occupy the space he once dominated. First, the status of the child was elevated. Offspring were no longer viewed as disposable assets or future laborers. They became the emotional center of the family, requiring specialized care and education. Second, the state intervened in the domestic sphere. Governments took over the responsibilities of education and welfare, duties that had once been the sole province of the father. No longer the sole gatekeeper of his children's future, the father's role changed. He was demoted from a domestic deity to a civil educator and an emotional provider. The father figure remained, but his absolute authority was fractured. The modern home was left with a throne that was increasingly empty. By the 1960s, a final evolution took hold. Individual desire and the pursuit of intimate fulfillment became the new standard for the Western family. This is the postmodern model. The marriage contract today is built on the expectation of continuous sexual and emotional realization for both individuals. This creates a specific instability. When the entire structure of the family is tied to the fluctuations of human emotion, the unit becomes inherently volatile. If the emotional satisfaction fades, the union often dissolves. This has led to the normalization of divorce, separations, and the blended families that now define the modern landscape. Fragility is the trade-off of a system that prioritizes individual happiness over the rigid maintenance of a family dynasty. Historian Elizabeth Roudinesco argues that our current anxiety over the death of the family misses a vital point. We aren't watching a failure, but a transition. She describes the modern father as a mutilated patriarch. He is no longer a godlike authority. He is human, vulnerable, and navigating his own psychological life alongside his children. Critics often view this loss of rigid order as a sign of societal decay. They worry that without the old patriarchal law, the family unit cannot survive. Yet the evidence shows that people still deeply desire the family. We see individuals constantly deconstructing and rebuilding these units, searching for a form of connection that isn't coerced by law or economic necessity. This modern unit reflects the chaotic reality of its members. The distant authority of a domestic monarch has given way to a messy, intimate, and human form of belonging.